After posting the last video on the auto nap blocker tool, there were a couple questions that came in and statements, and I wanted to kind of address a few of them to go a little bit deeper into using the auto nap tool and just to show you some of the questions that I'm going to be focusing on today. One from Margaret's meeting that says, thanks, is there an adjustment somewhere to make the edges between the embroidery letters and knock down more narrow? And Alice asks, once the nap blocker is created, can its outline be manipulated to achieve a desired look? Very similar questions, and thank you, Linda. She said that she still uses Heat and Gone. In the video I said it's not absolutely necessary to, but thanks for pointing that out, that you still like to use it and that it will kind of eventually poke through a little bit. And just so you know, I do use Heat and Gone whenever doing a towel. Even if I do use the auto nap blocker, I simply put that in the video just to kind of let you know that it is going to help with that. And if you don't own Heat and Gone or a product similar to it, that it will help. But under any circumstances, if you have Heat and Gone, I would still utilize it because it's an amazing topping that will prevent any fibers or anything from poking through embroidery. And if you don't know what that is, you can find that on Floriani's website and just look for the Heat and Gone topping. Okay, so let's get into the video a little bit. So I have this FTCU text open just like in the previous video, and so I'm going to show you a little bit more of what you can do with that auto nap tool. So I'm going to select it, and as you learned in the first video, that whenever you're working with text, the auto nap tool that's located up here in the upper right corner, it's not available until you break apart the text. Okay, so that's just a requirement. It just has to be done in order to utilize that tool at this point. So we're going to right click on the lettering and we're going to use breakup text. And you'll see that now if I go to the sequence view, I have the letter F, T, the C, and the U all separate, and it's no longer text. They're all satin paths, and that's what I needed in order to utilize the next tool. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to come up and choose the auto nap blocker, which you can see now is available. So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to show you that. So one of the questions was, can you manipulate the lines, and can you eliminate maybe some of the space in between these letters? Because really, if I was doing it, I would utilize that. I didn't go into much detail about editing it the first time I shot the video, so this one is going to be all about manipulating what you've created, because you really wouldn't want this space in between. It's okay to have. If you don't want to spend the time editing, it's fine. It's going to work just fine. You'll just get some better results. Maybe it'll look a little better if you do have the confidence to go in and manipulate the design a little bit. So some people are comfortable doing that, some aren't. It's not necessary, but you can do it. So when you create this auto nap blocker here, you'll notice in the sequence view that it added this fill stitch. So I just wanted to show you what that is. Okay, so if I click on it, you'll notice that in the properties box, it's stating that it's a motif, a line, and it's a line pattern, and it's utilizing a wave stitch type. So that's what's happened here. Okay, it's created an outline around all the letters, and then it's converted it to a specific wave fill. Okay, my density is 2, my stitch length is 2.5. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to bring this up above it, and I'm going to select it all and zoom in. Okay, so this is what that tool created. If I click on it, you'll see it's what I just duplicated. I can go in and I can go to the edit mode, and now I have all my points, and even the stitch angle of the wave fill. So before I do that though, I'm going to just click it and convert it right over to artwork. So that you know exactly what's happened. So when I selected these letters and I clicked the button, what the software did is it created an outline utilizing an outlining tool that is available in software. It converted it to an artwork piece, and then what it did is it converted this artwork to a mesh fill. Okay, so it just does all of that behind the scenes. But not only that, it changed it to a mesh fill, and then it also changed the parameters of that mesh fill. For instance, it was utilizing this pattern right here, which makes kind of like an X, and that's important to knock down that material. And it even went one step further, is after it converted to that type of a wave fill, it came in here and adjusted the density. As you know, this one, which I showed you, had a 2 millimeter density. This one has 4. So I'm going to just change that to a 2 and hit apply. And basically that is what the software did behind the scenes for you, so that you didn't have to do it yourself, which is great. So now if I take this and I want to edit it, I just wanted to show you how it went about doing it. Now if I want to clean this up, and I'm not doing it over the top of this one, I'm just going to show you here so that you can see everything really clear. I'm going to go ahead and zoom into it, and I'm going to click on the shape edit tool, which is this tool right here. And now all I'm going to do is manipulate the lines a little bit. So first of all, I can click and drag over these points so that they're all selected, because let's say I want to get rid of that and I want it to kind of come more straight across. Once I select those with the shape edit tool, now I can right click and choose delete points, and I'll right click outside of it so you can see what happens, because it hasn't generated that yet. So I right click and notice that those are gone. I do have this piece of artwork here. Excuse me. So now you can see that it cleaned that area up. So if I zoom out, you can see that that whole area that was missing some stitches is now completely filled in. So one of the great things about this feature and using this mesh fill is that it creates these lines going in the opposite direction, and as you modify it, it regenerates and does it the same. So this looks much better in this area. So now let's say I don't want it to come all the way up between this T and the C. Maybe I only want it to come down to about right here. And the purpose of that is to keep it clean and keep it to where no fibers are going to poke through right here, because it's really not, you don't really want those fibers to poke through right there. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to the shape edit mode by clicking this icon. And now what I'll do is I'll click and drag over those points, and I'll hit delete points. And then I'll right click outside of it so you can see that it just cleaned that up. And that actually looks okay. You could go further into the modifying it if you wanted. So then let's focus on this in between the F and the T. Ideally we'd want it to kind of come across about right here, a lower part of that inner F, and we would want to eliminate this section here. So again, with the shape edit tool selected, I'm going to come in and notice that, you know, there's no point right here on this side, so there's no point between here and there. So one of the things you might want to do is come in and right click straight across from here and add a point. Okay, and I'm just going to change that point to a line point, and it just makes it kind of very straight. So with that there, I can delete all of these in here, and then it's going to create this line kind of going across. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag, which I just did, but not quite enough. So click and drag to here. I'm going to right click and hit delete points. And now you can see that the line's coming straight across. And I'm going to right mouse click, and it just cleaned that up considerably. So other things that you can do is you can take this line here. This is actually your angle line. You can see that it follows this line of the stitches. And so if I wanted to manipulate that a little bit, I can. I can take it into here and I can right mouse click, and now it'll follow that path. So that is an option as well. If you would like the stitches to go a little bit different of a direction, you can change your start points, your end points as well. So you have that capability. So to take this one kind of step further, I'll zoom in, and I might want to clean up the artwork even more. Again, it's not necessarily, and you've got to remember that these are like kind of open stitches that are just, going to knock down the material. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You can spend a lot of time trying to make something like this perfect or look perfect on the screen, but it's not going to really change the outcome much of the stitched product, especially because this isn't working with filled in stitches. It's just open, but you can modify it some if you want. So I'm gonna zoom into this area. Some of the things that I would probably do is I'd come in here and I would probably delete these points because they're really not necessary. One of the other things is you can see that there's a loop here. I don't like loops too much, so I usually will select a node or a point like this. I'll right click and I'll change it to a cusp. And the reason I'll change it to a cusp is because a cusp will allow me to change one side of a line without affecting the other side. So I'll come in here, I'll grab this little control handle and I'll move it up, and notice that there's this bend in there, and that's because of this point as well. So I could come in here, select it, right click, and choose a cusp as well, so that I can manipulate it at the same time, and I can get it more of a straight line there. You'll notice that I've just kind of cleaned this up a little bit, and I can right mouse click and it will just look a little bit better. Let me zoom out here, and this area looks a little crazy to me, so I might spend just a second in here and let me zoom out just a little bit so I can see this line, and I might come in here and notice that it's changing both sides of the line, and that is because you can see up here it's a smooth point. This is another thing I love about having this dynamic toolbar up here, is because before you would have to right click just to see what kind of a point it is. So one of the things with this selected, I can change the point type. We used a cusp earlier, and now what I can do is I can come in and choose symmetrical, and what that does is you can see that this line right here is longer from the point than it is from the point to the edge of this line. If I click that, it's going to make them both the same amount. It's just something that you can do. You don't have to. It wasn't necessary in this case, but we just went ahead and did that, and just quickly, easily manipulated that to make it look a little bit better. So you have the ability to really get in there and edit this auto knot blocker fill pattern that gets stitched before the letters. I could take this now, put it right over the top, but the one thing you have to remember to do if you do something like that is I'm going to delete the original, but I've got to make sure that this stitches out first. We want it to stitch out before the letters do, so I can just right click on it in the sequence view and choose, it's kind of going off the screen, but I go down to move and move to the first, and it will automatically push it up to the first object in the design. So yes, you definitely can manipulate it, and those are the different things that you can do to modify the auto nap blocker fill pattern that's created. So I hope this was informational. Hope that you enjoyed it, and thanks.